Welcome to Loco Gringo, Mexico, where we can take you beyond the usual on your vacation. Each week we talk with amazing locals who know the Riviera Maya and Yucatan like only locals can. Get real tips to real places, insights on the local scene, culture, and cuisine from a local's perspective. So pour yourself a margarita, mezcal, or tequila, grab yourself a comfy chair, and let's get the show going.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Loco Gringo, Mexico, where we talk to some great locals here in the Riviera Maya, Yucatan area about their passions and what's brought them to the area, and they always have some great tips for you. Well, today is not going to disappoint. We're going to be talking to Kenneth Johnson, who is the owner of EcoColors. It is an eco tour company that has been around for about 20 years or so. And Kenneth is going to talk about some of his passions, and he has some great stories he's going to share with us. He also has some information about the whale sharks. And for many of you who may not know, whale sharks migrate across the top of the Yucatan Peninsula every summer from the end of May, early June, across the summer months. So Ken is going to talk to us a little bit about whale sharks. He's also going to share some information on some of the other activities, wildlife, birding, and he's going to talk about a cave with snakes. So you want to stay tuned for that. Also, Ken's got a great story at the end on a special request that a group that he was leading asked for. So you want to stay with that because it is quite funny. This episode is brought to you by Playa. You know, lots of people ask us for information and help when it comes to real estate, whether they're looking for retirement, an investment property, or maybe they're looking to relocate to the area. And we refer them over to our friends at Playa. The folks at Playa we've known for years, and they'll make sure that you, the buyer, are fully protected and informed when it comes to buying real estate. So if you're looking to buy a piece of paradise, check out our friends at buyplaya.com.
Hey, Kenneth, how are you today?
Fantastic. Very happy to speak with you.
Hey, Kenneth, thank you so much. I know that it is a really busy time of year. It's whale shark season for you and everybody at EcoColors. So I'm really glad you could find time in your day to talk to us.
My pleasure. I'm always happy to talk about the fantastic wildlife that we have in the Yucatan Peninsula and in Mexico, including, obviously, the amazing whale sharks.
Well, I have to ask you, Kenneth, I want to step back a little bit, is how did you end up in the Riviera Maya, Cancun area? Because you lived in Mexico City for a while, correct?
Yes. Well, let me start first by saying that even though my name is Kenneth Johnson, I'm really Mexican. Well, you can actually hear my accent. You know, I have a strange accent for an American person, I guess. So I'm really Mexican. My mother's Mexican. My father's American, obviously. But I've been living in Mexico since I was 5 years old. And I had the chance to study marine biology. So my passion is wildlife and nature. And I lived in Mexico City for most of my life, but then, you know, I was not so happy living in Mexico City. It's a big city, it's crowded, it's traffic, and there's not much wildlife and nature in Mexico City. So after, fortunately, our honeymoon with my wife that we did in Costa Rica, and where we see how they were handling and managing ecotourism, I just said, this is what I need to do for the rest of my life. So we started building a project and thinking, where could we go in Mexico that had, you know, amazing wildlife, that had tourism? And we studied several places, you know, Oaxaca, Chiapas, Michoacan, you name it. I mean, Mexico has tons of places where you can enjoy nature. But we decided for Cancun and Riviera Maya because, well, we have the second largest coral reef in the world. We have a fantastic jungle. We have the wetlands. We have a fantastic variety of wildlife. And at the time, we had around 4 million visitors. This is in 1997, 20 years ago. There were like 4 million visitors. So we said, well, that's the place to go. And that's how we arrived to the area.
Wow, that's amazing. And I arrived on the scene in 1992, and actually I remember when EcoColors was just kind of getting started and everything. So were you based, where were your first tours set up? I mean, did you get right into doing like whale sharks, or I know you have tours down in Siankan as well?
Exactly. We started precisely with Siankan Reserve. When we arrived, we did a scouting and a research on what was available and how can we develop products. Because obviously the challenge in the destination has always, how do you market the trips? Because you can have a fantastic trip, but if you don't have the context, the appropriate context to market or to promote your trip, it's not going to work. So first, well, we did the scouting, and we saw there were turtles, there we had Siankan, we had the reef, and we developed like 4 different one-day trips. And we started to precisely visit the big companies and promote them. And well, being very honest with you, it was challenging because first our idea was to offer, a commission of 10%. And well, very soon we found out that commission was crazy for the destination. But that's how we started developing these products, trying to enhance the environmental interpretation, the values, the interesting facts of the wildlife that we were going to see, and be able to show that to people. So people could raise an environmental awareness and could be, amazed because of what they were seeing and experiencing.
Question for you, when you talk about the natural attractions and awareness to the environment, how have you seen that change over the year? Actually, years, plural.
Well, yeah, it has been very interesting. I think that in the beginning, it was more our passion to share this information, and there was not so much interest. I mean, obviously, there's people that are interested in this, they really enjoy it. But through the years, I've seen more and more people that want to really learn about nature, that want to really experience unique activities and unique experiences precisely. And the information is key here. You really need to have a guide that is knowledgeable on what we're going to speak. For example, let me give you an idea. An example. We've been running the Whale Shark Tour for 15 years, and we've been running Siankan Tour for 20 years. Well, in Whale Shark Tour, most of the show is being put by the whale shark. The whale shark is just amazing. And with little interpretation, or actually sometimes no interpretation, people are going to be happy if it's a nice day. Well, in Siankan Reserve, there is a high expectation of looking at wildlife. And actually, the amount of wildlife that we looked in Siankan is not so big. We don't get to see jaguars or toucans or monkeys that are exotic and interesting wildlife to see. We really see limited wildlife, but because of the very interesting explanation of our guides on the jungle, the trees, and whatever wildlife we get to see, the level of satisfaction that we have for Siankan is higher than in the whale shark, which is crazy, because obviously whale shark should be much higher because most of the show is being put by the whale shark. But this tells you how important is the environmental interpretation that guides provide to customers, and the environment that they provide when we're running a tour to get people excited about what they're seeing and what they're doing.
I think that's absolutely fabulous that you and your team put together the effort to make sure that the guides are knowledgeable about what they're showing guests, and to really have guests learn and gain an appreciation for our natural resources and environment here in the Yucatan Peninsula. I've seen other tour organizations where, like whale sharks, perfect example. Somebody just goes out in the boat and the guy takes them out and says, yep, there they are. And it's really to gain a full appreciation of the environment, of the animals. It takes a little bit of knowledge by that guide to really express what people are really seeing.
Yeah, totally agree.
So, like for the whale sharks, and I mean I've spent lots of time in Sian Khan and gone on lots of tours, and as I've mentioned to you before we started recording today, is I've only been to the whale sharks once. Do you find that do you have more people that gravitate towards the whale sharks because it's so exotic and it's more of a crowd pleaser than, like, saying, going down in Sian Khan where it's a little more remote and off the grid?
Yes, I think that the sharks, have gotten a reputation of an exotic wildlife tour, And I've read some articles that the number of people that are looking and enjoying shark trips all over the world is just amazing. And again, going back to the information you give people, just telling people you're going to swim or you're swimming with the biggest fish in the world that can reach 45 feet long. I mean, that is just putting a lot of value, a lot of emphasis on how special what you're doing is for you. You have the chance to swim with the biggest fish in the world, which, by the way, is harmless and which is fantastic and which has the biggest population of whale sharks in the world. So, you accumulate different facts and different pieces of information that are really interesting and that precisely provide value to the experience of people. So people at the end feel that, they're doing something special. This is living like a Discovery or a National Geographic program, and they're part of the program. So all that, combined with the information that the guide is giving, I just think it's an amazing opportunity for people. And
if you would, for our listeners, now how many people usually go on your tours, whether it's whale sharks or Sian Khan? Because, too many times, if you're staying in the hotel zone in Cancun in some big resort or something, they're going to load you up and it's going to be lots of people. But it's all about the experience with EcoColors, correct?
Exactly. I'm glad that you're asking that, because that's actually one of our main values that we've established since 20 years ago. We believe in personalized attention. You cannot provide environmental interpretation to a group of 100 people, with one guide, because, half of the group or more than half of the group are not going to listen to an explanation, and handling a group of 100 people is just crazy. So I'm not saying that we don't have sometimes groups of 100 people. Sometimes we do, but what we do is that we divide the groups in 10. We have maximum 10 customers, so precisely we can have this interaction between the guide and the customers, and the customers can ask whatever questions they have, and whatever doubts and whatever, inquiries that they may have on the specific wildlife or the nature, or even, the social issues of the Mayan communities. We are able to establish this communication and this interaction. And again, that's what gives the value to the experience of people. So that personalized attention is probably the most important value that we provide to customers.
Now, in going out with customers, tourists, people who are visiting the area, and what would your recommendations be, even for our listeners, if they're coming out to an experience, an ecotourism trip with EcoColors, or just going on an ecotourism excursion in general? Do you have any tips on what you would suggest for them so that they minimize their impact during the experience?
Yeah, sure. For example, we have different things that we do. For example, we tell people that the sun blocker, we don't want to get people that get sunburned, but we try to limit the places where people use sun blocker, like the face and the neck. And then we encourage people to use a t-shirt and to use, clothes so they can cover themselves. Obviously, our boats have a tarp, so they're not under the sun for 5 hours. So one of the things is the sun blocker. The other thing is we try to have big bottles so people can refill their bottles of water. We try, well, obviously the maintenance of the boats, it's done appropriately, so we're not just burning fuel or having grease going into the water. So we have a set of different good environmental practices that we've adopted. And then with the whale shark, obviously there's a minimum distance that you can not get closer than that. We don't touch the shark. So there's several things that we do to try to get people again to respect what we're doing, the place that we're visiting and the wildlife that we're enjoying or looking at. So precisely, we don't harm and we don't impact, or if we impact, we have a very low impact on the resource or the destination or the ecosystem that we're visiting.
In places like the whale sharks off the coast of Cancun and Isla Mujeres, and even in Siancan, we get people who ask us all the time, are people allowed to scuba dive? Can you scuba dive in those areas? Can you go out and scuba with the whale sharks?
Well, no, you cannot do it. It's forbidden as part of the regulation. Actually, just giving you a parenthesis, the activity was established 15 years ago when precisely World Wildlife Fund at the time asked us to put a workshop, and we invited people from the government, from the local community, researchers, etc. And then that's how it was established, the activity, the tourism activity of whale sharks. And then we're set what was able to be done and what was not able. And diving was precisely from the very beginning decided not to be able to do diving. And it's not only because, well, it's written in a paper, you cannot dive with the whale sharks. It's also because of practical reasons. When you're with the whale sharks, you need to swim. And swimming with the scuba gear is not so easy, and you need to jump from the boat, get in the boat, jump from the boat, get in the boat. And doing all that with the scuba gear, it's just complicated. And if you do it snorkeling, it's much more easy and you have much more, you swim much more easier.
No, I understand entirely. I know that when I went out there many years ago to see the whale sharks, that I was snorkeling. And I just didn't know if they had changed any of the rules and regulations to permit scuba diving. Can you tell us, Kenneth, some of the other rules that they have to protect the whale sharks in terms of, are there a limit on how many boats or operators can take groups out there in a given day? What types of laws have been put in place to protect them?
Yeah, and now the whale sharks they've been protected by the Dirección General de Vida Silvestre, and now that the Mexican Caribbean is a protected area, all the Mexican Caribbean, now the whale sharks are being fallen under the CONAM, the Comisión Nacional de Áreas Naturales Protegidas, and it's basically the same rules. Again, but they are starting to limit the number of boats. There were 320 permits. That means 320 boats with a permit to be able to go out and do the activity. And this year they lower it down to 240. What the director of the reserve wants to do is to lower every year the number of boats. So precisely, there is not that much impact. Now, in a normal day where you have hundreds of whale sharks, it's really no problem at all because each boat grabs like their own whale shark and then you can enjoy the activity. Also important is that not the 240 boats are going at the same time and in the same place. The boats in Holbox usually stay between Cabo Catoche and Contoy, and over there's around 120 boats, I guess, or 100 boats maybe. And then the boats around Cancun and Isla Mujeres go to the blue waters. And so the areas are divided, and that's how it's been done. Now, what the government is also doing is that if they catch a boat operator not following the rules, which is for example, part of the rules is you can only go 2 persons at a time with a certified guide and enjoy the snorkeling. After you've done it, those 2 people go in the boat, and then the next 2, and then the next 2. And if they catch, for example, an operator with 4 people in the water, or 6 or 10 people in the water, they give them a fine, and what they will do is they will take away the permit for the next season. So that's part of what the government is trying to do, and it has open communication with the boat operators to precisely tell them, guys, we want to have a rational management of the resource. This is a blessing that we have so many whale sharks and that we have the tourists that want to swim with the whale sharks, but we need to do it in an appropriate way. We need to have rational way of handling the resource without impacting the resource. So those companies that do not follow the rules or break the rules by too many people, or now, for example, this year there's a wristband because there's a fee that goes to the protected areas office. Every people that go to the whale shark, they're paying a fee so they can see the whale shark. So any rule that they break, they're in chance of losing their permit for the next year.
Oh, wow. That's a really good incentive for them to be above board and play by the rules.
Yeah, and actually, let me tell you a little bit more. Since I was telling you that 15 years ago we helped and we did the workshops to establish the tourism activity with the whale shark. After that, they asked me at the time, to develop a training workshop. So I developed the training workshop for the local guides, and I trained hundreds of people in Hobos and hundreds of people in Cancun and Isla Mujeres. And let me tell you, it is really challenging because, for example, the courses were not a 2-hour course, these were 40-hour course, 5 days. And it was theoretical and practical. And I remember one of the courses, we were doing the practices in the water, not with the whale sharks, but we would do like if we had a whale shark going on a boat and we had a kayak that was our whale shark, etc., etc. And at the time, I remember I told to one of the guys, hey guys, okay, there is no revision. No one is revising, no one is supervising the area. What do? Do you throw 2 people at a time or you throw 10 people at a time? And here we have one of the guys, after 40 hours speaking of, doing the right thing, adopting good environmental practices, etc., he tells me, I'll get my 10 people in the boat at once. And I say, but haven't we been talking about following the rules, adopting good environmental practices? And the guy told me, well, Kenneth, you were saying it. There's no supervision. There's no authority. I can do whatever I want. So I said, yeah, but what have we been talking about? So anyway, it is challenging because being able to really change attitude and change mentalities in some people is really complicated. So then that's why, it is important to have authority and to establish fines, because then that's when people learn, when they get a fine, then that's when they may change their behavior.
Wow, incredible story. It's not, I think over the years, and I've seen it in some of the diving and development of the area, more and more people are learning to see that there's value in having the rules to protect the environment and the animals for sustainability and longevity.
Yeah, we're very happy. I can tell you that 20 years ago we had 70 protected areas in all Mexico. Now we have, I believe, 172, I think.
Beautiful. That
was the last count. 20 years ago, 6% of the land protected. Now 12% of the land protected. So there is a shift in mentality in Mexico, and an understanding that we are again blessed with so many different ecosystems and wildlife, and we need to protect them, and we need to do a rational use of these resources. And that's why, the concept of the biosphere reserve protected areas, these are reserves where you are allowed to have commercial activities, but again, in a rational way, The idea is that we learn how to manage them rationally so then people can still live in the area. For example, in Siancan, connecting to that part, we could not tell people, well, we could, tell the Mayan communities, okay, guys, this is a protected area, get out of here and go live somewhere else, I mean, the government could have done that, but they didn't do that. And then that's when they came up with this concept of biosphere reserve, telling them, okay, you can live here, but if you're going to fish, we're going to do it in a rational way. And actually, for example, Punta Allen in Siancan is a fantastic example of how the community learned to fish in a rational way the lobster. Every year they fish 10% more lobster because they decided to follow the rules. Do not catch pregnant lobsters, do not catch small lobsters, do not catch lobsters for 4 months in the year, well, that's when they're, reproducing. And because of them following the rules, the population of lobster is growing every year. So this is part of precisely of what we explain people, this story or other stories, where we tell them what's happening in Mexico. And again, we don't only speak about the good things, we speak about, what are some of our challenges, what have been some of our really big problems. But then again, we try to gear it to, okay, what is changing in a positive way and how are we handling this? And obviously this is all connected to the normal citizen, We as citizens really need to improve and to change our behavior so then we can learn and we can improve the management of many areas. So that's, just an example of what we're doing.
Oh, it's a wonderful. I love hearing everything that you say. There's such passion that comes across, passion for the, not only for Mexico, but all little environments and community and everything. It's wonderful. I wonder, Kenneth, if you could tell me, we spent time talking about the whale sharks in Siancan, but what are some of your favorite excursions that you have, that EcoColors has, that you absolutely enjoy, that you can never get too tired of doing because you love it so much?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it's actually difficult because I really enjoy, a lot of nature. Besides the whale shark, that it's fantastic. I love, for example, crocodiles myself. I love marine turtles. I love the snakes in Cantemo. There's a cave where hanging snakes, they hang from the ceiling, and then when the bats come out, they catch a bat and they eat it, and it's just a phenomenal activity to see. Obviously, people that are scared of snakes, it could be a nightmare.
Where is this cave of snakes?
This place is called Cantemo, and this is actually like in the middle of Siancan Reserve, but then it's not inside the reserve. It's going from Carrillo Puerto, which is a town in the middle of Siancan Reserve, and then we go towards Mérida. So it's like in the interior of the Yucatan Peninsula, and this is the only place where people have seen snakes hanging from the ceiling to catch bats. And again, this connects to what we tell people. We tell people, okay, imagine the strategies that some species develop to survive. It is amazing that the adaptation on their behavior has been hang from the ceiling, because then the bats are going to come out and you're going to be able to catch them. So when we explain this and people get to see this, they are blown away with what they're seeing, So, you name it. We have crocodiles, monkeys, birds. I mean, speaking of birds, we have 550 different species, and some of them just fantastic. So all that combined with for example, in the last times, what we've really enjoyed have been also our multi-day tours. Besides our one-day tours, we've been fortunate to do multi-day tours, and we do bicycle trips, we do backpacking trips, we do eco-educational trips, And we get people to precisely enjoy nature, adventure, culture. And when you enjoy it in 7 days, 10 days, well, the interaction that you have with the guide is bigger. So then the amount of information and the experience that you get is just much better.
Wow. Well, I'm still stunned about the cave with the hanging snakes. I have to do that.
You need to do it. Actually, it was, I believe, like 5 years ago that BBC came and filmed it. And in that year, it won the second, it didn't won the first place, but it won the second place of the best wildlife video of that year. Awesome. We've been fortunate to take care of the BBC like 3 or 4 different times. Animal Planet also a couple times. And for example, one of the times that BBC came, they spent 7 days with us. And just to give you an idea, in those 7 days, they did 4 TV programs.
Wow.
One of the guys that was filming, he told me, Kenneth, in Africa, sometimes we take 6 months to do a program. And here in 7 days, we have done 4 programs, you know. One of the programs was with marine turtles, the other program was whale sharks, the other program was tarantulas, and the other program was focused on the red-eyed tree frog. So it is just so fantastic, the amount of wildlife that we have. And when you have precisely the knowledge or you get the information, then it's when you transform the experience. Because, you know, it's like I always explain people, you could go into an archaeological site and you get to see a whole bunch of rocks and buildings. If there's no interpretation, there's like, okay, and you know what? How or why should I feel happy or enhance experience just at looking at some, you know, buildings and rocks? But when you get the explanation of why the Maya culture was so fascinating, then it's when it gets precisely that value. Well, we do the same with nature, you know. You could be looking at a lizard and saying, well, it's a lizard, you know. What do I care about the lizard? But when we explain, for example, the basilisk, I don't know if you've seen the basilisk.
Yep, I know.
Okay, and you explain why the basilisk is so fantastic, then people say, well, I saw a basilisk, you know, and they enjoy that they really saw a basilisk. So well, that's what we do on the trips, you know.
If I can just jump in there for a minute for our listeners. Now, I am not a herpetologist, which is someone who loves lizards. I like them, but I'm not studied in it. But a friend of mine from the Baltimore Zoo used to be curator of reptiles, and he pointed out on a trip the Basilisk lizard, and he said in the herpetology world, it's also referred to as a Jesus Christ lizard because it can run across the top of the water. So if any of our listeners have seen a lizard run across the top of the water while you're here in the Riviera Maya and Yucatan, you've probably seen the basilisk.
Yeah, and you can see them in the cenotes. In the cenotes, sometimes they precisely run across the water. And that is fantastic. And then the name, you know, whoever named it the Jesus Christ lizard, you know, with all respect, obviously, for the religious people.
Absolutely, all respect.
It's a fantastic name, you know.
Yeah. No, it's great. I'm getting so excited and giddy just listening kind of to all your stories because, you know, sometimes I get a little bit caught up in the office and that there's red-eyed tree frogs. I didn't know there was red-eyed tree frogs here in the area, so that's really cool.
And let me tell you, let me just interrupt you 1 second. Biologists think that this tree frog adapted and changed the color of the eyes to be able to protect themselves from so many predators. They would get caught mainly by owls and other birds, and they would be sleeping in a branch of a tree, and the owls and other birds would catch them easily. When they adapted and they changed the color of the eyes, and when the tree frog felt that the owl was arriving there, and they would open the eyes, that blink of red color would hesitate the owl or the bird for 1 second, and that little second of hesitation would let them escape from their predator. So when you hear that, again, it's just so fascinating to see all the strategies that different species of the world have adapted to survive. And those that, well, do not develop the strategies that they need, well, they go extinct.
Wow. Incredible. Incredible. I have my question for you, Kenneth, is, you know, we have a lot of people who it's their first time coming down, and a lot of listeners in our show who are researching about coming down on their stay. And what would be some of the tips or recommendations that you would have for someone coming down to the area so they have a really authentic experience? And they can, of course, be with EcoColors, but just experiences that they can have being in the Cancun Riviera Maya. Do you have any recommendations for them?
For sure. Thank you. Thank you for asking. Yeah, I would, for sure. Well, if they come in the summer, I would recommend, obviously, the whale sharks. I would also recommend the marine turtles. Being able to snorkel with the marine turtles is fantastic. And that trip, for example, we combined it with a cenote. The cenotes, anyone that comes to the Yucatan Peninsula should for sure go to a cenote. These are crystal clear water. Well, it's actually part of the underground rivers. And the water is crystal clear, and it has caves, and it has different colors, and it's just so refreshing and so amazing. I would recommend it for sure to everyone to visit a cenote. I would also do, you know, an archaeological site for sure. You know, we're in the Maya area, and actually I would also go to a Maya community, you know. Over there, I don't want to extend this too much, but let me just tell you this brief story, you know. We go to a couple of Mayan communities, and when people from big cities, you know, and sometimes very wealthy people economically, see the conditions of life that some of the Maya people live in, first they get shocked, like, oh, you know, these people are poor, you know, economically, and they're having a hard time, etc., etc. But when they see that people are happy, people are enjoying, people are smiling, even though they don't have an iPad or an iPhone or a big TV or whatever, it shocks them, you know. And when we explain that people live sometimes in the Mayan community in a day-by-day basis, and they are happy with what they have and how they live, it really gets them to reflect on how they're living and what are the most important things in life, you know? Because obviously we're in a society driven by money and driven by success and by being, you know, successful in whatever you're doing, and money is a big part of it. And I'm not saying that money is not good, but, you know, when you look and have the chance to have these experiences, it also gives you the chance to see that other people are totally happy and sometimes even happier than what you are with very little money because they value other things. So anyway, it's again just a little story on what people can see when they come. You know, I would do a combination of natural attractions, some adventure, and some culture.
No, your story about the villages and the people, it really rings true, and it's very important, and it is something that everyone should take advantage of, because it does give you that time to reflect, to see what people consider to be a priority. So it's very interesting. I appreciate that comment very much. Kenneth, I'm going to wrap this show up. But I want you to come back because I love talking with you. And we can talk about some additional adventures and everything here in the Cancun, Yucatan area. But if people want to get in touch with you, what is the best way they can reach out, whether they have questions about whale sharks, Mayan communities, adventures, maybe some of the 7-day trips that you have? What's the best way that they can get more details?
Yes, thank you. Well, we have our website, which is ecotravelmexico.com. And my personal email, I'm happy to give it. I use info@ecotravelmexico.com. And they can send us an email. We have a toll-free number in our website. They can give us a call. And we're always happy to advise and to help and assist people with whatever plans they have, even though they may not end up buying a tour from us. We're just happy to advising people on what can be done in the area. Obviously, in the activities that we do. Let me tell you this little story. This is another story that it was a little bit shocking at the time. We had a group. I'm not going to say what nationality, but it was some people from not from Mexico, and they wanted a very exotic 15-day program. So we did a very exotic 15-day program, and everything was arranged. And all of a sudden they told us, "Hey, but by the way, we want ladies." And I say, what do you mean by ladies? "Yeah, we want ladies to sleep with the customers." And I said, "Well, I'm sorry, but we don't do that. We do."
You're not an escort service.
We don't provide ladies. That's not our business. So they say, "Well, you're an operator, so you need to." I say, No. There's a line, obviously, and there's a limit. So we said no, and we lost the customer. And we don't have a problem with that, because obviously we want to maintain ourselves true to what we are doing, and we don't want to corrupt ourselves because of, getting some extra money, doing something illegal or something that we don't think is appropriate, So anyway, it's just a little story, but then again, connecting to my point, we're always happy to advise and to suggest people on what can be done in terms of nature, adventure, and culture.
But escort service is off the list. Okay.
Yeah,
even though that's adventure for sure, I guess.
I guess. Let me tell you, we've done trips in Cuba, and that's another story. And actually, I took a group of bicycling people in Cuba, and a guy was telling me, "Hey, Kenneth, I want to sleep with one of the ladies. What do you think?" I said, "Well, that's your business. I would not recommend, because I don't know if it's safe or not safe. I cannot tell you." So anyway, he did what he wanted to do. But anyway, we try to obviously encourage people to enjoy what we're doing,
Well, Kenneth, I've enjoyed our conversation so much, and I hope you'll come back on the show again. It's great joy, and I'm actually looking forward to going out to the whale sharks next week. So I really thank you for all the information that you've given. I'm going to be more prepared, as I think our listeners will be too, if they're going to be here this summer and want to go out and see the whale sharks. So, Kenneth, thanks again so much.
Thank you, and looking forward to see you next week.
Well, are you inspired now to move down here? Do you want to move down here and have a little place of your own? Well, then you need to talk to our friends at By Playa. They have a friendly and knowledgeable international staff. They speak lots of languages, and they are known as being a buyer's agent. Well, what does that mean? That means they are only going to show you and sell you properties they know that have escrituras. An escritura is a title. And it's part of their due diligence to make sure the title is clear, there's no liens, and that the person who's selling the property is actually the owner. By Playa works with lawyers that specialize in fideicomisos, which is a Mexican trust. You may have heard of it already before. And they can address things such as capital gains problems immediately and right up front, so that you have no surprises along the way to closing. So contact our friends at By Playa at buyplaya.com. Thanks for tuning in today, everybody. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Kenneth as much as I did. But before you go, just a reminder to visit today's show notes at locogringo.com/podcasts, and you'll find information about some of the things we discussed today. Also, you're going to find information for Paulina. Paulina's our concierge, and she can make it super easy for you to go out with EcoColors. She can take care of all the details for you. You just have to show up. And we will have links over to her email address, so you can contact her as soon as you know you're coming down, and she can help arrange some of those activities for you directly with EcoColors. Well, wow. I'm blown away from our conversation with Kenneth, and I think it's a great example is that we really all love the area so much, and we think you should too. And I hope that you will join us next week for another interesting conversation with someone from here in the Riviera Maya and Cancun area.
Thanks for listening. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe. For links, show notes, and more information, head on over to locogringo.com or give us a call toll-free at 800-478-0081.
Porque se tragó la luna, estaba enferma la rana. Su madre soba que soba, dedos de pluma la panza. Pensó ranita que luna era una toronja blanca. Y aunque la luna es de leche, la leche estaba cortada. Croa, croa, dedos de pluma. Croa, croa, dedos de agua.